Hey everyone, I'm Gary Schneider with Every Orphan's Hope, and I'm with Helen Mumba, the founder and current director of Bethel Home. And thank you so much for joining our live broadcast today. We're here really to introduce you to Bethel Home Babies and the vision that God gave Helen about 3.5 years ago to reach out and rescue children who've been abandoned, left, orphaned, with no one to care for them. So thanks so much for joining. What we're going to do is we're going to just talk for a minute. There's a little conversation with you and Helen and I, really about how it started, where her heart is, what she's seen God do, a little bit about the babies and the mamas here, and then we're going to take a walk inside. And for the protection of the children, we're not going to call any of them by name, but I'm sure Helen will share a few stories just without identifying the child by name or by story, just to protect their identities and their privacy. So, again, welcome. Helen, thank you so much. Say hello to everybody at Every Orphan's Hope.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Every Orphan's Hope.
So I met Helen in October, and it was just kind of one of those by chance things, right? By God's chance. And when I first met her and I toured the facility here, I noticed she had several 4-year-olds and even one 5-year-old. So we began talking about that. I know the ministry's for babies, but what about these children now that are coming into school age? Mm-hmm. And so that's really how our conversation started. And so from there, Helen, maybe you can tell people a little bit about the 3.5 years, the age of the babies, how some of them have come to Bethel Home, a little bit about their stories, and really what the problem was that God called you to address.
Okay, so Bethel Home, as he's mentioned, started 3.5 years ago. So the whole idea started because there was a gap. For us, we felt that there was a need for babies, especially babies that have been abandoned or lost or different scenarios. So for us, we wanted a special place for these babies to be raised and hopefully go into adoptive families and reintegrate into their homes or be fostered by families within the country. That was the goal, and that was what we were hoping to. Our desire was to raise them up to the age of 5, and then we were hoping that by the age of 5, they are reintegrated, adopted, fostered. So that was our goal and our desire because the need was there.
So how many babies did you start with 3.5 years ago, and how many do you have now?
Okay, so we started out with 3 babies, and we now have a capacity of 20, but altogether we've looked after 48 children.
48, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And of course, since it's 48, so 5 of those have been adopted off, and the remaining 23 have been reintegrated into their families.
That's fantastic. So the 4-year-olds and the 5-year-old not been adopted, not been reintegrated. What does their future look like right now?
So that was our main concern, actually. So because our vision was by the time they are 5 years old or they're already reintegrated or in a family setting. But that didn't happen. So it became a concern for us, a prayer point for us. We started to pray, especially last year, for God to open a door because these children are growing up. We just did not have capacity. We were not able to continue looking after them because we just didn't have the ability to because of the setting that we have here.
Okay. So that's really where I found Helen when I first met her. And you can tell we're taking care of babies because there's a few in there that are not too happy right now. They probably see Helen out here and want her to come in. But, that's where I found Helen. And as she described the 4-year-olds and the 5-year-old, those of you who've been with us for a long time, for the last 15 years, we started with children who were 4 and 5 years old. And those children now are 20, 21. Some have graduated college. And some of our beds are becoming empty in some of our homes. And we've been praying about, Lord, what do you have next for Every Orphan's Hope? We've taken this generation over the last 15 years and done everything you've asked us to do for them. And we've seen God's glory and His provision and just miracles in what He has done to raise these children. And so we've been praying for about 2 years as a team. What's next, Lord? And we weren't really looking. We were just waiting for God to show us. And when I came to Bethel and met Helen, and she told me about the 4-year-olds and the 5-year-old, I just really felt like God was saying, these are the ones I'm preparing next for my Father's house, where there's a mother and there's siblings and there's a family that they can join, where they can go to school, where they can be cared for, where they can be raised, and a home where Christ is made known to them. And so that was our first discussion was, well, let us help with the 4-year-olds and the 5-year-olds and begin to have those discussions. But then as she just shared and we shared with one another, God just seemed to be saying, all of this is coming into my Father's house, into Every Orphan's Hope. And so that was in October we started. By March, we had concluded everything legally that needed to be done to secure those babies with social welfare and communicate with them about the transfer to Every Orphan's Hope. So that's how we got to where we are right now. And yet, you know, Helen is the one who's been called to care for the babies. So when we brought this ministry into our ministry, we left Helen as the director. This is her calling. This is where her heart is. She knows how to do this better than anyone. So we're really thankful to have her as part of our team now. Very proud, actually, to have her part of our team. She's an outstanding woman of God, gifted, called, and doing a fantastic job. So I think right now what we'd like to do is go inside. Again, we're not going to give names to the babies, but we'll introduce a few of them, maybe their ages, and have you see these beautiful babies that God has rescued at Bethel Home. So let's take a walk with Helen.
So this is Bethel Home, and as you can see, some of the children. Sorry, this is one of our little ones. This is Mommy Martha. She's giving the babies water to drink. She's been with us since inception. So most of these we've looked after from the time they were very, very little, from 10 days old or so until now. So yeah, some more kids over here. Elijah. I think most of the moms in the kitchen.
Okay, that's fine. We can just visit here. So I wanted to introduce a familiar face to some of you. This is Courtney Foster. She's the director of the World Missions Team at Percival Baptist Church. And Percival Baptist Church has been with Every Orphan's Hope since day one, supporting our family as missionaries and supporting the work here. This is Courtney's first visit to Zambia, and she has spent many, many hours right here doing just this, holding the babies, loving on them, and you can tell she really enjoys it.
Yes, very much. She's really enjoying this. So most of the moms are in the kitchen. So you see we have some 5-year-olds here, 6-year-olds, some are toddlers, 3, 2, 1. There's a mama over there, Mama Lila. She's also one of the moms looking after our babies. And that's Mommy Beatrice over there, you see her? Looking after her. She's one of our mamas as well. So these women are here 24/7. They've given themselves to serve, so we're very grateful for them to be here.
This is Emmanuel. And Marvin.
All right, we're going to let the mamas get back to work. We're going to step back outside. Thank you all. Yeah. Hi, guys.
We're not going yet.
Great. So, Helen, maybe share with those that are watching a story or two about some of the children that you know, what their situation was, how they came to Bethel Home, and what life has been like for them since then.
Okay, so I'll share 2 stories of 2 different children, and I'm sharing those particular 2 because those are the 2 that I mostly feel like, my God, I'm so glad we started this. I'm glad you chose us. And it just gives value to the ministry. It's to show that it's necessary. The first one I'm going to give is, I'll name the baby John. Baby John. So baby John came to us at a year. He was about 1 year and 3 months old. When he came to us, his father had abandoned him. He had malnutrition, TB, and was HIV positive. He was at the brink. We didn't even think he would live, but the fact that his family abandoned him and he was being looked after by a 15-year-old sister. So we are glad that we were there for him, and God was gracious enough to allow us to walk with him even as he was going through the TB and the malnutrition. And by the grace of God, the boy is doing so well. He's 3.5 years old now. He's thriving. He's in preschool. He's doing very well. So I feel so blessed to be in this ministry because I'm part of God's work. It just shows that we are part of God's work to bring restoration for these young ones. And then the second one I'll talk about is, I'll name her Jane. Baby Jane came to us at 1 year and 3 months old as well. Baby Jane had cerebral palsy. She has cerebral palsy. And when she came to us, her mother was only 18 years old. Basically with no form of income. She was living in a home where she was required to work for nothing while they look after her baby at home. But it wasn't helpful because baby Jane was not getting everything she needed. So she came to us, and we didn't think we could look after baby Jane because we were not well equipped. However, because we went to social welfare and asked, look, this child needs help, and they say they couldn't. They just basically said there was no way they could help. So we brought baby Jane in. And from that point on, God has given us the grace to look after this child. She's thriving now, she's doing well, and with the support of every Orphan Hope, I believe she'll take leaps and bounds, and we're just grateful to God. Stories like that make me so happy to serve. I wouldn't be doing anything else. To show that I'm part of God's kingdom in making a difference. It's humbling, it's a blessing. It's a blessing from God, really. So those are the two stories. That's
wonderful. Praise God. And just after we arrived, Mandy and I, on this trip, and Courtney, a baby had been brought to the house here. 15 days old, after spending 10 days in the hospital. The baby had been abandoned by her mother and thrown into a pit latrine. And she suffered burns from being in that environment, and her eyes were still a little bit affected. So we're praying that her sight has not been damaged, but she's been here now about 5 days, 6 days?
Yes,
yeah,
about
6 days. And sometimes the children come and there is no name. They don't know where the baby came from. Maybe the parent hasn't been identified. So they do name the babies here, and that baby is named Mandy. And so on the other side of that camera right now is my daughter Mandy, and so I'm so thankful to be here with her, and we're just so grateful that Bethel Home was here for baby Mandy, to receive her, to care for her, to love her, and she's healing. Her skin is looking better, and the mother has been identified. She was in jail for some period of time, but now we'll begin the process of trying to reintegrate this baby back into a healthy family, an extended family possibly. It could be some time before the mother would be able to do this, but this is really what Bethel does. They work with families to try to reintegrate and help these children recover and become restored to life. And we're just so grateful for this work, and now for every Orphan's Hope to be a part of it. And so I thank you, Helen, for what you do and your calling and just your love for Christ and for these children. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
We appreciate it too.
So,
thank you.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, are there any questions? I think Mandy says there is a question. Go ahead.
Will the government allow you to make the kids available for adoption? We know it requires a lot of paperwork and time.
Yeah, it's an adoption question. So what's the process like here locally?
Locally, obviously, you go through social welfare. Most of the adoptions they encourage mostly domestic adoptions. And the process is quite difficult, I'll tell you that. It's not easy, especially in recent years because of trafficking and things like that. So it's not that easy. But we've had 5 in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, not as many as we would like because there are some that we will need, but you know, the process is a bit difficult.
Okay. Any other questions there? Hey Sharon Hoover, good to see you. Hi Sang, thanks for joining us. We appreciate everybody tuning in today. I know it's getting a little crazy, a little noisy,
I know.
but thank you so much. And we would love for you to be a part of what God is doing here at Bethel Home. So,
What about international?
oh, what about international adoptions? Even more difficult.
Yes, even more difficult for those.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's an evolving process right now here in Zambia.
Right.
They were recently Hague certified, and
Right.
they're taking some steps, but I think the government's view here is they really prefer domestic adoptions. So they make it quite difficult for the international adoptions. Yeah. Anyway, folks, thanks for joining us on this Saturday. It's great to be here and share what Bethel is all about. If you want to learn more, go to our website, everyorphan.org/babies, BABIES. You'll see some more about Bethel Home there, and we would love for you to join us too in helping support these babies. There's a lot of needs here. Helen's done a great job with her team, but I think God has perfectly timed the bigger audience, the bigger team of Every Orphan's Hope to come alongside Helen, not only for what the current needs are, but the future plans that God has for the babies He still wants to rescue and bring into this program. So thank you all for joining us. Mandy, thank you for working the camera today. Helen, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
and we
you,
say
everybody.
God bless.
God
Take
bless
care.
you.
Bye-bye.